solid royal blue cotton sweats, top and bottom. The generic kind you might find at any general merchandise store. Only these sweats looked like they'd been piled up in the corner of a crack house for about 6 months. They were covered in dust and dandruff and who knows what. Her tightly braided hair was in much the same condition. She was missing an arm. It had been amputated at about the elbow. I was told that this was due to her lack of self-care in relationship to her diabetes. Deborah sat down in my office with her legs crossed, her arms crossed. Everything she could cross was crossed. Deborah was cross. Deborah was bitter about life, but she wanted to find a job, only she told me she didn't have time to look for a job. What is it that separates those of us who succeed regardless of our circumstances and those of us who fail or perhaps languish for months, years, even decades? What is the difference? Deborah was referred to me in those early days of my career when I was a career coach and a job placement specialist, and I had just moved to the last place on earth I ever wanted to live, and taken a job that was far removed from any dreams or hopes or goals that I had for my own life and career. My own wanted circumstances at the time, I felt cheated, I was depressed, I felt trapped in those unwanted circumstances. But that was going to change. I came to love that place and stayed there for 30 years. I came to love that job and became very good at it. And it changed the trajectory of not only my career, but my life. And I became very good at helping people find jobs, particularly people facing significant barriers to employment. And Deborah had significant barriers. So Deborah, you say that you don't really have time to look for a job. Let's talk about that a little bit. All Deborah could tell me was that she spent a lot of time shopping for groceries, so I decided to work with that. So let's imagine, Deborah, that you're at the grocery store and you're in the checkout line in your sweats. And there's a couple of people in suits in front of you, and they're discussing a problem that they have at work. And you overhear them, and you decide to interrupt them politely. You say, "Hello, my name is Deborah. I can, I know how to, and I love to solve problems like the one you're discussing. Would you happen to know anyone that could hire or supervise a person with my skills?" Deborah scoffed. "That'll never happen." And quite frankly, I think that about ended our appointment that day in our conversation. What if we could only connect to our great intentions? What if we could only connect the life we really want as easily as we connect to our current, sometimes unwanted circumstances? What if we could only connect? What separates those of us who succeed fairly quickly, regardless of our circumstances, and those of us who fail or languish for months, years, and yes, sometimes decades? We're all observers of the world, and we basically have three choices, and we make one of these three choices on a daily basis. Choice number one is perhaps best represented by one of my favorite passages in all of literature, and that's from Lewis Carroll's Alice in Wonderland, when Alice comes to the crossroads and she meets the Cheshire Cat. And Alice says something like, "Which way should I go, sir?" And the cat responds, "Well, that depends on where you want to get to." Alice says, "It doesn't really matter where. of course, the cat responds that it doesn't matter which way you go. With choice number 1, it doesn't matter where we go because we don't know where we're going. With choice number 1, our circumstances define us. The choices we make are based on the choices we believe that we have. Some of us will bounce around from circumstance to circumstance for our entire lives, but of course some of us won't bounce at all. We just get stuck. Our circumstances don't change, so neither do we. With choice number 1, our circumstance is our excuse. With choice number 2, our circumstances are still kind of defining the choices that we believe we have. But this time we're approaching it with a little bit more creativity. With choice number 2, we see our circumstances for what they are. We're just dealing with reality, right? And this is the one that most of us are making most of the time. We're just dealing with reality, but this time we think, if we brainstorm some new ideas, some new actions that we can take, we can get different results from our circumstances. That surely sounds familiar. Choice number 2 is the one that most of us are making most often. When you really think about it, it's still our circumstances that are defining and setting the boundaries on what those choices may be, on what those actions may be. But there's a third and very powerful choice. This is the choice in which I choose to live. I try to live, choice number 3. And it's the choice in which I do my work. With choice number 3, we see our circumstances from a new perspective. Or better yet, we try to see our circumstances from a new perspective. And when we're able to see our circumstance from a new perspective, what a moment earlier seemed impossible now becomes possible. What a moment earlier is something we would never have conceived as being a choice, as being an action that we could take, now becomes possible. A choice that we might make, but the obstacle was too big. Now we recognize, if I really want it, I can overcome that obstacle. With choice number 3, we see our circumstance from a new perspective. What seems impossible becomes possible just because we see our world anew. We believe something different about our circumstance. And when we believe something different about our circumstance, we reach just a little bit further. And when we reach just a little bit further, that extends the horizon of what we believe we're capable of reaching for. And when we believe something new, we reach a little farther yet, which extends the horizon of our belief just a little bit further, and so on and so on. The second time I saw Deborah, she came to my office wearing a solid royal blue business suit, crisp skirt, stylish jacket, beautiful blouse, matching high heels, a professional portfolio in her one existing hand. I smiled. She smiled for the very first time I ever saw her smile. So I guess you have a story to tell me, Deborah? Yes, I do, Mark. You're not going to believe this, but first I want to apologize. The first time I met with you, I thought I was fooling you. And it took me a while for me to realize that I wasn't really fooling you at all, probably, but I knew I was fooling myself. And I realized I was trying to fool the world, but I was only fooling myself. And you're not going to believe what happened. Well, I think I quit. Did you get a job at a grocery store? No. But I was standing in line in the checkout aisle, During the noon hour, during the work week, there's a man and woman in front of me, and they're discussing a problem they have at work. And Mark, I did it. I did what you said. And I'm thinking, you were listening to what I said? She goes, I did what you said. She goes, I interrupted them. I said, excuse me. Hello. My name is Deborah. I can, I know how to. And I like to solve the kind of problems that I heard you talking about. Do you know anyone that can hire or supervise a person with my skills and interests? Mark, I have a job interview at 10 a.m. Monday morning. Now what do I do? So we laughed about the irony of the situation. We worked on a resume a little bit. We practiced interviewing and so forth. And I sent Deborah on her way. I later heard that she did not get that job. But I heard that sometime after that she took a job with a local warehouse. Now, I would like to ask all of you, have you ever allowed your mood in the moment to interfere with the intentions of your life? Have you ever allowed your mood in the moment to interfere with the intentions of your life? Okay? I know I have. Frankly, folks, I've never met anybody who hasn't at one time or another. We all do this. What separates those of us who only connect to our mood in the moment? What separates those of us who only connect to our current, sometimes unwanted circumstances, when what we really want to connect to is that desired future, that direction that we want to go, that purpose in life that we so much want? What separates Deborah in her crack house sweats from Deborah in her business suit and Deborah on her way to her job? Of course, her business suit was only a reflection of the change. In fact, I've worked with hundreds, probably over 1,000 at least, people with significant barriers to employment. And this is what made me curious, because I was noticing that some of them succeeded quickly and some of them did not. And I began looking at their circumstances, and I found that all of them faced physical barriers to employment. Lack of transportation, healthcare issues, health issues, lack of childcare, lack of accommodation and accessibility in their communities and in the workplace. They all faced physical barriers, and they all faced what I call attitudinal barriers, discrimination. They were discriminated based on their gender, based on their race, ethnicity. They were discriminated based on their background, in some cases on their criminal records, in many cases on their criminal records. But they were all facing discrimination of some kind. Even those folks that I worked with that were just simply laid off for a job were discriminated based on the fact that they were part of a layoff. So everybody was facing physical barriers, everybody was facing attitudinal barriers or discrimination. And the third piece of this is they all had an asset, a personal asset, whether it was a short-term training experience, 2, 4, or more years of college education, years of experience, or maybe a month or two of years of work experience, or maybe just a month or two of volunteer experience. They all had an asset that they could put down on a job application or a resume. So they were all facing physical barriers, they all faced discrimination to one degree or another, and they all had this asset to get them started, at least, in a new career. They all had similar circumstances, but some succeeded quickly, and some languished for months, years, even decades in some cases. We all face obstacles, yet some succeed and some fail. So if it's not our circumstances that determine success or failure, what is it? What is it that was the difference between Deborah and her sweats, Deborah going to her new job? It wasn't her circumstance. It was her attitude about her circumstance. The difference between success and failure starts with discovering the power of choice number 3. The quest for a whole new world that exists right here, right now, for each one of us, every day of our lives. We don't make that choice once and for all. We have to make it every day, as I said earlier. The only thing that changed from Deborah in her bitter, crack house, dusty, dirty sweats, and Deborah in her business suit going off to her new job, was that Deborah changed her mind, and that changed everything. Her circumstances were still the same up to that point. She just changed her mind about her circumstance, and that gave her an entirely new trajectory for her career and for her life. With her new attitude, she had purpose. She had a direction in life. She began to change her daily habits. She changed her goals. She arrived at what I call the intersection of purpose and now. The intersection of purpose and now is that time and place that we arrive at when we make choice number 3. When we realize, now I know who I am, I know what I really want, and I'm at least willing to take that first step in a new direction. I'm changing my mind, even if I can't change my circumstance. Years passed, and I had a couple of new dress slacks that needed a hem. So I had left them with a seamstress at the men's clothing store out at the mall. I needed to go pick them up one day, and so I went out there. And I walk in the store, and there's nobody there. This is one of those stores where usually a young person immediately on me. May I help you, sir? Nobody in the store. Until finally a woman comes out of the back of the store, and she goes, may I help you, sir? And I said, picking up a couple of pair of slacks from the seamstress, and she goes, what's your name? Sturgell. I'll be right back. Sure enough, she comes back out a couple of moments later. We walk up to the cash register. She begins to check me out. And I checked her out. She's missing an arm at the elbow. Deborah? It's me, Mr. Sturgell. Wow, it's been a long time. Do you work here now? Not really. I didn't know what to think about that. She goes, I'm the regional training director. And I'm here supposed to be training 2 new employees today. But one of them called in sick and the other one didn't show up at all. She goes, I'm running the store. She goes, Mark, I hate running the store. So Deborah, once and again, have a little bit of laugh about the irony and where this all began. She remembered it too. And she soon sent me on my way. And I've never seen Deborah again since that day. But I've never forgotten Deborah. What changed between the first time I saw Deborah in her sweats and when I saw Deborah as the regional training manager for a major men's clothing retailer? Choice number 3. If we can only connect to the dreams that we have for our lives as powerfully as we connect to the obstacles to them. If we can only connect to our great intentions as strongly as we connect to our mood in the moment. If we can only connect to what we really want in life as powerfully as we do with our current, sometimes unwanted circumstances. Wow. What could we do? Where could we be? Who could we be? What effect on the world might we have? Deborah and many other folks have proved that we can make that connection. With choice number 3, at the intersection of purpose and now, by changing our mind before we change our circumstances. It makes me think that, so many times we wish and pray, please change my circumstances, when maybe it's our circumstances that are meant to change us. All we have to do is make choice number 3. So that's what happened. Remember what happened to me. My story. Okay? I was just moving to the last place on earth I ever wanted to live, starting a job that had nothing to do with my dreams and hopes and goals for the rest of my life. But here I am, in Decatur, Illinois, 30 years later. This may be the last place on earth that I ever want to live, by choice. That job, I held that job for 9 years. I became extremely good, to the point where it led me in some new directions, and I've been working in those new directions for my entire life. And in those 9 years in that job, I discovered my purpose in life. And my purpose in life is so clear, I can share it with you now. My purpose is to help people achieve dreams that are greater than their current realities. You might say, my purpose in life is to help people connect with the life they really want, regardless of their circumstances now. I changed my attitude. I changed my mind about my circumstances, and that changed everything. Deborah changed her mind about her circumstances, and that changed everything. I invite each one of you to change your mind, to make choice number 3, to join us at the intersection